I never imagined I would experience something so impactful. My name is Pedro, and what I am about to share may seem unbelievable, but I assure you, it happened to me. It all started on an ordinary night. I went to sleep, not knowing that the early hours of that morning would change my life forever. Suddenly, I felt my body disconnect from the physical world, and I was taken to a place I can only describe as infernal. It was dark, oppressive, and the air was laden with an indescribable heaviness. The sound of wailing pierced my soul, and I felt a despair I had never experienced before. It was as if all joy, hope, and peace had been ripped away from me, leaving only emptiness and pain. The ground felt unstable, as if I were stepping on burning ashes that did not consume. The heat was suffocating, and the heavy air made even the simple act of breathing a struggle. The atmosphere was so dense that it felt like it was crushing me from the inside, bringing forth an anguish I didn't know was possible to feel. As I walked, I began to notice details that made everything even more terrifying. There were distant flames, but they didn't illuminate. On the contrary, they seemed to intensify the surrounding darkness. The sound of screams and wails grew louder with each step, and I felt my heart racing. Fear mingled with guilt, and for the first time, I began to reflect on all the choices I had made in life. Suddenly, I saw a figure approaching. It was indistinct, but it radiated an oppressive presence. There were no words, just a weight that brought me to my knees. I realized that this place was not just physical, but also spiritual. There, I was completely exposed, unable to hide anything. My mind was invaded by thoughts I had always tried to avoid, mistakes I had tried to forget, and pains I never wanted to face. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. It was then that something began to change, and the true lesson of this experience started to reveal itself. When I arrived, I realized I wasn't alone. There were souls wandering, trapped in torments that reflected their greatest regrets. I saw people chained by ego, consumed by hatred, and dominated by greed. Each soul seemed to live in an endless cycle of suffering, continuously reliving the consequences of their choices. The sight was devastating. I saw men and women who, in life, were obsessed with power, now crushed by the weight of their ambitions. I saw people who never forgave, trapped in a cycle of bitterness. The most frightening thing, however, was realizing that those chains were not imposed by any external force. They were the direct result of the decisions each of those souls had made while alive. As I observed all this, a voice echoed in my mind, clear as thunder. The decisions you make today define your eternity. It was as if God were showing me the spiritual consequences of every choice we make in life. Pride, envy, the lack of love, all these things build walls that separate us from Him. In the midst of that darkness, I felt something different. It was like a beam of light piercing through the suffocating gloom around me. At first, it seemed distant, but I soon realized it was moving toward me. As the light drew nearer, I felt an inexplicable peace, a sensation completely opposite to everything I had experienced up to that moment. It was God. There was no doubt in my heart. It wasn't just a physical presence. It was something that spoke directly to my soul. He didn't use words at first, but I could feel His message clearly. It was as if every part of my being understood what He was communicating. God revealed something to me that completely changed my perception. He showed me that, despite the suffering I was witnessing in that place, His grace was still available to everyone. Pedro, He finally said, hell is not a place where I send my children. It is the place where they choose to be by rejecting my love. Those words cut through me like a sword. I realized that the true punishment wasn't the presence of suffering, but the absence of God. Everything I had witnessed, the pain, the darkness, the despair, was a consequence of living outside the divine purpose. God continued speaking to me, explaining that many of the souls there had consciously chosen to ignore His call during their lives. They had clung to fleeting things, neglecting what truly mattered, their relationship with the Creator. Then, something extraordinary happened. God showed me glimpses of those people's lives. I saw moments when he had tried to reach them, sending signs, people, or circumstances to call them back to the path of light. But in every case, they had chosen to ignore those calls. The reality was devastating. No one was there by accident. He concluded with a sentence I will never forget. "Pedro, it is not my desire for any of my children to be here. But true love cannot be forced. They choose." As God showed me these truths, he also revealed something even deeper. Many people on earth already experience an internal hell, even while physically alive. He showed me how unforgiveness, guilt, and addictions can be as destructive as the spiritual chains I saw in that place. Suddenly, familiar faces began to appear. There were people I knew in life, friends, family members, and even co-workers. The shock was overwhelming. Seeing those souls suffering, trapped in self-imposed torment, filled me with sadness and a profound sense of responsibility. It was at that moment I understood my mission. God wasn't just showing me that reality for my own learning, but to carry a message of hope to these people before it was too late. I needed to warn them that hell begins when we choose to distance ourselves from God. Here and now, God explained that even in the deepest darkness, there is still hope for those who choose to repent and seek the light. But the decision is personal and non-transferable. He showed me that every person has the power to break their chains, but it only happens when they accept His grace. In a moment of desperation, I asked God why I had been taken there. "Why me?" I asked. His response was clear and direct. "You needed to see the gravity of your choices and understand the weight of my grace." It was as if He was telling me that there was still time to change, not just for me, but for everyone. Then, God gave me something I will never forget, a vision of heaven. The contrast was so overwhelming that I could barely hold back tears. The peace, joy, and presence of God were indescribable. There was no pain, sorrow, or regret, only fullness. It was the absolute opposite of everything I had witnessed before. But God made sure to emphasize something. Heaven is not just a destination, Pedro. It is a daily decision to walk with me. That sentence was etched into my mind. He was showing me that even while living on earth, we can experience glimpses of heaven by choosing to follow Him daily. When I returned to my body, I woke up with tears streaming down my face. My heart was flooded with gratitude and responsibility. God hadn't just saved me from myself. He had also given me a mission, to be a light for those still in darkness. Since that day, my perspective on life has completely changed. I began to see each day as an opportunity to love more, forgive more, and point others to God's grace. I realized that my existence wasn't just about me, but about impacting those around me. I understood that many people live surrounded by darkness without even realizing it. My goal now is to be a reflection of God's light, so that other souls can find the path to salvation before it's too late. Today, I share this testimony with a clear purpose, to warn and inspire. I want you to know that hell is real, but God's goodness is even more real. He offers us the chance to rewrite our stories every single day. No matter how far you've strayed, there is always a hand reaching out to you. That hand is God's, patiently waiting for each of us to accept His love and forgiveness. My experience showed me that no soul is beyond the reach of His grace. But the decision to change must come from within. The question I leave you with is, are you willing to accept this opportunity? If you're reading this, know that it's not by chance. God has a plan for your life, and maybe this is the chance He is giving you to reflect on your journey. My mission is to be a voice for those who are still lost, just as I once was. I want you to know that eternity starts now with the choices you make today. God pulled me out of the depths of spiritual despair so that I could be a living witness to His transformative power. Now I ask you, what choice will you make? Your eternity is in your hands, and the decision you make today can change everything.